Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting here at Fenland. My name is Councillor David Connor, and I'm Chairman of the Planning Committee at present here. Welcome to all those members of the press and the public who are joining via the live stream. Before we begin, please may I take this opportunity to remind everyone to turn mobiles and computers to silent and ensure that when using the microphones, the red light is on and turned off when you finish speaking. So, firstly, we'll go to the agenda item number 1. I'd like to ask member services and Joe if we have any apologies for absence. So over to you, Joe.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to report we have no apologies for absence today. Thank you.
Thank you. So, through the chairman's discretion, I've now decided to move agenda item number 5 to agenda item number 4. I hope that doesn't put too many people out, but well, that's what we're going to do. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, there is one confidential item that has been circulated to members, and that will be considered at agenda item number 7. So agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. Member services will now go to each councillor in turn, and please can you state if you've anything to declare in relation to any agenda item here today. Thank you. So Joe again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny.
Nothing today, Joe.
Thank you. Councillor Connor.
Nothing today, Joe.
Councillor Mrs French.
Nothing.
Councillor Gershner.
Thank you. I declare that I spoke on a similar agenda item in December regarding solar farms. I come today at this meeting with a completely open and non-predetermined or predisposed view, and I'm looking at the application that's in front of me today. Thank you.
Councillor Gershner, can you just confirm what meeting that was where you spoke? Thank you.
December last year.
Yeah.
Planning, full council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mafferton.
Thank you. I'm a member of Wisbech Town Council. I do not attend planning there. Apart from that, I have nothing else to declare. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marks.
I'm a member of mainly Parish Council, but don't get involved in planning there. I'm also on a number of IDBs, 2 of which I believe cover both applications, but remain open-minded.
Sorry, forgot to declare. I'm a member of 2 IDBs as well. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs French, is that 10 IDBs? Councillor Senate-Clough.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. We'll now go to the main part of the meeting. Members should only make a proposal on the planning application when invited. However, I will be initially asking if anybody is going to propose the officer's recommendation. Clearly, if that fails, I should be looking for an alternative proposal. Members are reminded that any such proposal should be accompanied by the planning reasons for doing so. So, I will now hand over to Richard Fitzjohn. He's the Senior Development Officer at Fenland to present application F/YR24/0457F, agenda item number 5. So over to you, Richard, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I just advise people the reason why we're just skipping back slides is because we've changed the order of the agenda, so just bear with us a moment, please.
So, yeah, if you're good enough to bear with us while this happens. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Agenda item 5 seeks full planning permission for the installation of a 49.9 megawatt ground-mounted solar farm and a 30 megawatt battery energy storage system. The main components of the proposed development as a whole comprise solar PV panels mounted up to approximately 3.5 metres above ground level on galvanised metal frames, battery energy storage system compound containing battery storage containers, a substation, inverter cabins, an equipment storage building, wire mesh deer fencing and CCTV poles, access tracks, and underground engineering operations. Planning permission is sought for a temporary period of 42 years to accommodate up to one year for construction, up to 40 years for operation, and up to 1 year for decommissioning. The proposed development is cross-boundary, located partly within Fenland and partly within South Holland. The application site as a whole across both districts totals approximately 140 hectares. This comprises approximately 74 hectares within South Holland and approximately 66 hectares within Fenland. The proposed development would be accessed from Granite Gate Road, which is located within South Holland. Fenland District Council are the determining body for the elements of the proposed development which are located within Fenland. Just like to highlight to members that an update report has been circulated, which includes 2 items that have been received following the publication of the committee report. The first one being that South Holland District Council have refused planning permission for the part of the development falling within their district. And the second one being an additional neighbour response has been received. The application is before planning committee today due to the number of representations received from residents that are contrary to the officer recommendation. The application site for the proposed development as a whole, comprising the land within Fenland and within South Holland, is shown red on the attached plan and aerial photography. This plan here shows the application site divided between the 2 districts. So you can see Fenland shaded in blue and South Holland is shaded in red. This is a map showing the agricultural land classification for both districts. So you've got South Holland to the north on that picture and Fenland to the south on that picture. This is a wider aerial photograph of the site. So you can see sort of centrally in that you can see where it says site access and there's a red star next to it. That's where the access to the site is located. So it just gives you a general view of the wider area. As you can see, it's predominantly open agricultural land. The site plan shows the layout of the proposed development with the solar array shown in blue, the battery energy storage system compound located towards the centre of the site, the substation located towards the southeast of the site, and solar inverter cabins interspersed within the site. Here are some elevations of the proposed development showing the solar panels, the battery energy storage cabins, substation, switch house, inverter cabins, storage building, and fencing and CCTV. The following slides show some images of the views towards the site. So this one is short distance views towards the site from Granite Gate Road. Image number 2 also shows the access there to the site. These images show long distance views from Harold's Bridge and Ellow Bank, the junction of those roads. There's long distance views from Crossdrove and short distance views from Broadrove West. So the proposed development would contribute positively to environmental sustainability by providing a significant contribution to renewable energy generation and energy storage, contributing towards addressing climate change and improving energy security and resilience. The proposed development would contribute positively towards social and economic sustainability by increasing reliability of the grid to support a growing need from local residential and business properties, and by potentially contributing towards lower costs of energy provision. The proposed development would provide additional environmental benefits resulting from a significant biodiversity net gain and additional economic benefits resulting from employment during construction, operation and decommissioning. It is considered that these factors attract significant weight in favour of the application in the overall planning balance. The proposed development would not result in any significant harm in respect of residential amenity, highway safety and transport, public rights of way, flood risk and drainage, archaeology, trees, fire risk, aviation and crime. It is considered that these factors attract neutral weight in the overall planning balance. The proposed development would result in harm to the character and appearance of the area, and BMV land, best and most versatile agricultural land, being taken out of arable production. It is considered that these factors attract moderate weight against the application in the overall planning balance. Whilst it is acknowledged that there are some matters that weigh against the development, it is considered that the identified benefits which would result from the proposed development, particularly the significant contribution to the proposed development towards addressing climate change, outweighs the moderate harm identified. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Richard. We have two speakers on this application. First, I'd like to invite Councillor Brenda Barber to make her presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes when you're ready. Just take your time and
I'm Brenda Barber, Ward Councillor for Leverington and Wisbech Rural, which includes Tid St Giles, where I also live. Last December, I brought a motion to full council entitled Preservation of Fenland Landscape and Recognition of the Area of Fenland as a Critical Food Producing Area. There should be a copy on the screen. I ask that our farmland, some of the best and most versatile in the country, according to Natural England, should be kept as farmland for our food security, and that our unique Fenland landscape should be recognised as such. The motion was unanimously approved and agreed by full council. That's all of you on council. You might say, but Natural England has said they have no objection to the siting of the solar farm. That's true, but if you read why they have no objection, they say it's because there is no permanent, underlined, loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. But 42 years is a significant length of anyone's lifetime. There are also caveats, including the company needing a commitment for the preparation of reinstatement, restoration and aftercare plans. And this would include returning the land to its former land quality. They say that no permanent loss of agricultural land quality is likely to occur, provided the appropriate soil management is employed and the development is undertaken to high standards. How can we be sure this will happen? Many of us won't be here in 42 years' time. We have to take their word for it. Also, there is no proof that land of a poorer quality does not exist for this application. Paragraph 174B and footnote 53 of the National Planning Policy Framework states that planning policies and decisions should contribute to and enhance the natural and local environment by recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside and the wider benefits from natural capital and ecosystem services, including economic and other benefits of the best and most versatile agricultural land and of trees and woodland. Does this application contribute to and enhance the natural and local environment? My job as a councillor is to represent the views of my constituents. All the submissions to planning from residents are not in favour of this solar farm. The area where it's planned to go is where they walk their dogs and ride their horses. It is our beautiful and natural Fenland scape. They are worried about huge vehicles using small country roads, noise from the inverters and the battery storage units, the possibility of fires in the battery storage areas. Also the intrusion of 10-foot-high CCTV cameras and bright lights near their homes. Recently, a similar solar farm was smashed to pieces during a rainstorm, and that was in Anglesey in Wales. These are genuine concerns. As a matter of interest, a resident who lives near the area concerned has stated that it's currently used for growing food and straw. The straw is sent to power stations in March and Sleaford, so the land is already helping both to generate electricity and to provide our food security, which means our national security. These solar panels may be necessary, but why use our best agricultural land to put them on? The biggest area of land in this proposal is actually in Lincolnshire, and South Holland District Council have just refused their part of this application. As a final note, may I remind you that at full council, every single member voted in favour of protecting our farmland from exactly this sort of thing. We voted for it at full council and it was unanimously agreed. With that in mind, you simply cannot approve this and keep the pledge you made when you all agreed to that motion. Let's do the right thing and join our colleagues in South Holland District Council by also refusing this application. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. Questions, clarifications, members to Councillor Barber, please. Councillor Gerstner, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd just like to give you a statistic for your presentation. 140 acres of prime agricultural land will produce 1,100 tonnes of prime wheat. That in turn will produce 2 million loaves of bread. So I'm just giving you that statistic. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else at all? Questions for Councillor? That's something we're all happy about learning, I'm sure, Councillor Gerstner. But any more questions at all? No. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, so I'd like to invite now Callum Wright and Luke Shackleton, the applicants, as well as Jill Eaton and Ben Murphy, the agents, to make their presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes between you, so however you'd like to make up the time, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'll briefly introduce the team here before you today. I'm joined by Luke Shackleton, who is Development Manager at Pathfinder Clean Energy, as well as Callum Wright, who is a Planning Manager at Pathfinder Clean Energy, also known as PACE. PACE are an experienced renewable energy developer and operator based in England. My name is Ben Murphy. I'm a planning consultant with Third Revolution Projects, and we specialise in renewable energy projects. And I'm joined by my colleague, Jill Eaton. I'll pass you over to Callum from PACE.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the Apologies. Good afternoon and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Callum Wright and I'm the planning manager at PACE. As Ben just mentioned, we're a UK-based renewables developer, builder and operator from cradle to grave. TID has had 3 years of active and ongoing development as a project. We've engaged with statutory consultees from the start, which paved the way for our constructive dialogue with the council, resulting in scheme amendments and proactive conditions that reduce harm. This was complemented by our intensive site selection process, which fed into a site justification document agreed by the planning department and set out in the officer's report, which I think was very well produced. The headlines of this document being, the Fenland region as a whole was selected based on grid capacity and formed the basis of our search, so there's a distinct need. We noted that the district has policy which supports the development of sustainable infrastructure. Our point of connection is on site within the red line and connected via mast to an existing 132 cable, preventing lengthy cable route works and enabling project viability. There's a lack of prohibitive planning designations, and then we've completed sequential tests for flood risk and used the lowest quality ALC available to us in accordance with the MPPF. As well as bringing clean, green energy to Fenland, we offer a community benefits fund that will amount to a sum of 349,000 in today's value, contributed towards local community projects in the area. We create potential for and have willingness for partnerships with academic institutions in the area to provide presentations and site visits once operational, and we present significant biodiversity enhancements and the creation of habitats, as well as a commitment to enhancing the bridleways which will pass through the site. Thank you. I will now pass you on to my colleague Luke.
Thank you, Callum. Good afternoon, members. My name is Luke Shackleton and I am Development Manager at PACE. Coming from a farming family, I've seen firsthand the need for diversification within our rural economy to sustain the UK's food security. Partnering that with the UK's need for energy security, highlighted in recent years by the spike in electricity prices following global turmoil such as Ukraine war, demonstrates how these two industries can support each other, stabilising UK commodities. In 2024, UK Solar supported 20,000 jobs, contributing 1.9 billion in gross added value in the UK to the UK economy. Should TID get approved, it will not only support employment via local contractors to deliver construction packages and agricultural contracting, but also offer national employment via the various roles solar development brings, e.g. finance, legal, technical. The UK solar industry, as of 2024, saw 3,600 hectares under solar in conjunction with agricultural production, whilst 3,700 hectares were under solar with no agricultural production. PACE is committed to the continuation of food production with design specifications enabling grazing alongside our solar, and both our planning and legal agreements incorporating decommissioning obligations to ensure the reinstatement of the land. Thank you. I'll now pass you on to my colleague Jill.
We've done an extensive site search as per government policy. We've worked closely to respond to community concerns. We've worked with expert ecology teams and closely collaborating with officers through the application assessment process. The MPPF is clear that significant weight must be given to renewable energy. Changing our energy system does change parts of our local area, and we respect that this causes concern, but the impacts have been fully considered and officers agree that any impacts are outweighed by the benefits it brings. It's an application we are proud to be able to bring forward to committee, and we encourage councillors to support our application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions to the speakers, please, and indicate who you'd like to put your question to. I'll take Councillor Senetclough first and Councillor Gerster second.
Thank you, Chair. Hello and welcome. Thank you for your presentation. As we learned from Councillor Barbett's presentation, South Holland haven't given you planning consent. How will this impact the site in terms of some of this, particularly in relation to some of the stats you've given? So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the reason for refusal was cited on the other application was based on the use of agricultural land, as you're aware. The land contained within that portion of the site contains areas of higher quality than they're located within the Fenland. Notwithstanding, the use of this agricultural land has been shown to be necessary in meeting government's goals for solar generation, and the amount of land needed across the UK to meet those goals is very minor in the context of the whole country. In terms of the actual viability of this application, each can stand within their own right. I'd also like to point out that that application was determined under delegated powers. We were at an impasse with that officer, so we decided to go down that route with it. Obviously, in consideration that there's much less BMV on this portion of the site.
Do you want to come back?
Yes, if I may, could somebody just bring up the slide with the map, just so I can get a visual on the amount of grade 1 land that's in the Cambridgeshire, Fenland site. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I could just come in there. So there's no grade 1 land in any part of the site. It is BMV, but the site consists of grade 3A, which is moderate, and grade 2 land, which is considered good. The grade 2 land is almost entirely within the South Holland section of the site, so the Fenland section is almost entirely grade 3A, i.e. moderate quality of land.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to bring Councillor Gerstner, thank you.
Thank you. I make a statement that I have supported solar farms in the past. I've got several questions for you. Can you tell me how many solar panels will it take to cover this area, please?
I can actually get back to you with the exact figure on that, but there's estimates between 80,000 to 90,000 modules. They'll be fixed to arrays. I can't tell you I'm not good enough at maths to do that right now, but I can get back to you on answers like that.
So we're talking several thousand panels. Can I ask you what the panels are made out of, please?
So the panels are predominantly silicon. So we've got reports that report they're 96% recyclable, if that's where you're going with that question.
Thank you. Where are the solar panels made?
Most of our manufacturers are based in China. That's how the industry sort of operates at this moment.
Thank you. That's all for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. 140 hectares. I did a bit of maths this morning because I'm trying to scale this in my own head, and I've come up with, working it against football pitches, it's over 170 football pitches. This is a big area of glass that is going to appear. It's on the same scale as we've got a local reservoir being proposed, which is a concern. Obviously, you take it probably a third out for roadways and stuff like that, but you still have a big coverage of glass. One of my concerns is, and we hear it week or month in, month out here, is regarding flooding. We're told every time we pass something locally or whatever, there's always going to be a flooding issue because we're putting we're covering up more and more ground. What happens in a deluge with all this water? It's going to overwhelm, surely, the local rivers. We live in the fens, we have to pump water away. At the minute, there's a runoff rate of probably 2 or 3 litres per second for these fields. All of a sudden, this is all going to be volume going into the local rivers and the IDBs and stuff. And at times, they struggle already. Have you really taken this into consideration? That's my first question.
Extensively. So we did a lot of pre-application advice with the statutory consultees relative to flood, working very closely to address all their considerations. The officer's report is extensive in relation to flood considerations, and we've got a detailed submission which includes all aspects relative to flood assessments and drainage, and comments back from the statutory consultees which confirm that. Is there anything else we want to add on to that?
We've met the policy requirements, we've worked with the experts in the field effectively, but again, sort of, if this becomes a point of contention, we are, as a developer, we are very proactive at sort of allowing for additions to conditions, sort of allowing amendments for that if you think there's additional sort of oversight required from your end. So we'd be more than willing to sort of work with the case officer and actually negotiate something there.
Yeah, to be clear, it's policy compliant. It's policy compliant. It's compliant with the NPPF relative to flood. And as I say, we spent an awful lot of time prior to submission of the application to address every aspect relative to flood, working carefully with our specialist consultants. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe a lot of things are policy compliant. However, the proof of the pudding, as I'm sure Councillor French will agree with me, as she's on flooding, sometimes policies don't quite work out in the way they should do. Coming on from that, the size and scale of the proposed development. One thing I'm really concerned about, we have Welney down the road. We've been told numerous times, and the same with roads and stuff like that. The migrating swans see things that are big and shiny and think they're all lakes. You've mentioned regarding the solar panels. Now, I've done some research over the weekend, and by no means am I a solar panel expert, but it does say that there is or bird-proof solar panels. Will they be being used?
Yeah, so we have, from the outset of this project, worked extensively with our specialist ecologist team, who are obviously acutely aware of the species, particularly bird species in Fenland and in the wider area, swans being a critical one. And so the solar arrays and the layout have been specifically designed to avoid any of that sort of impacts on swan flight paths and things like that. So we've undertaken a glint and glare assessment as one example of the sort of surveys that we undertake to ensure that there is no impact on protected species, on swans, on birds, etc. We've worked closely with the county ecologist and with the local authority ecology team to ensure that there won't be any impact on swans and other protected species. And in fact, the habitat creation and biodiversity net gain that will arise as a result of the development will significantly enhance the natural environment for those species. Thank you.
Thank you. Only two more to go. So, the next one is, you mentioned employment, and it sounded really, really good until it sort of was bits of when we're building and when we're taking down. How many people will you be actually employing on site during the actual operation of this, which is 40 years? Because at the minute, obviously there are farmers farming this, and there will be job losses incurred by them, because obviously they've got people working agriculturally. So how many people do you believe to have on site and maintain on maintenance and stuff? And that's away from, we were told, legal people and stuff like that.
So actual on-site employment, we'll be looking at agricultural contractors, so hedge trimming, topping when it's needed, looking after sheep. This size site will have 2,000 sheep on it in times, which requires a number of farmers to look after them, much more so than you're currently seeing on site, where you've got a couple of tractor drivers during peak season. Sheep farming is much more labour intensive, so from a day-to-day maintenance, the sheep farming will bring more, and then the agricultural contracting for maintaining hedges, etc., will need to be maintained in a different way to potentially how they're being maintained at the moment, to comply with our habitat maintenance monitoring plans that we'll be agreeing with the council.
Just the additional point as well, which the officer's report summarises, for example, paragraph 1.2, the economic sustainability benefits in terms of supporting the reliability of the grid, in terms of local businesses. So it's not direct employment on site, but it's supporting the businesses in the local area. Thank you.
But to be fair on that, we have tractor dealers, we have mechanics, we have a lot of other mills that deal with the food that comes off there now. So I don't see that that's a balancing act that you can really fight with. Okay, so moving on from there, and the last one. We recently, well, last week, there was a fire in Ferndown with solar panels being blamed. How are these battery storage systems, are they lithium batteries that you are using to store the batteries? And also, what measures have you got in place? Because I had a look this morning, the nearest fire station is 20 minutes away, from what I can see via Google. And obviously, come the summer, when it's nice and dry and you've got nice shiny objects and you've got the risk of fire, You know, we're putting other residents and some fairly major sort of residents within the area, and we've already heard regarding cut crop and standing crop that's dry will soon catch fire. What, you know, what sort of mitigation have you put in place for this?
And animals.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The Planning Officer's report summarises the assessment that's been undertaken relative to fire risk. We followed good practice in terms of liaising with the local fire service. There's comments that have been provided and there's no objection from the statutory consultee on this matter. Additionally, there's conditions which relate to further information that we submitted related to fire, and access considerations have been considered additionally. Callum, if there's any further points, please.
Yep, so reiterating the compliance of the National Fire Chief's guidance, we have engaged with the Cambridgeshire Fire Chief as well, who've commented on the proposal. You know, I'm aware there's quite a bit of sort of misinformation and sort of fear around fire safety, as it should be. It's public safety should be our utmost concern. They are lithium-ion batteries. The recent fires in the country, just referring to sort of other examples, Carnegie Road, at the moment they were using a different type of technology, and they were consented prior to the lithium iron phosphate. It was a material called nickel magnesium cobalt, so they've updated the technology since then. All consented projects since the updates to the National Fire Chief's guidance have, operational ones, have not had an incident since. But obviously, we want to make sure we are following any sort of management plan attached. It is the highest priority for us as a company alone, outside of planning.
If I can just come back to you on that point, I deal most days with wet lead through to lithium batteries. Wet lead is easy. Lithium batteries are a nightmare, and you all know by transporting them alone have to be specially transported. My concern is we haven't got the technology. We've seen lorries catch fire with car transporters, with cars on them that are lithium batteries. My concern is we've got that as one issue, and then followed on by, if we did have a fire there, we haven't got the fire service locally. So I'm just trying to understand what you've got in place on site.
So we obviously do have the conditions that are in place to sort of prevent it, to provide a management plan and evacuation strategy, which are, again, we're open to adapting them. So if you think there's more compliance required, obviously most of the measures, they're sort of to do with the spacing between the containers, the sort of provision of water on site, accesses, multiple accesses. So they're all preventative measures. Each unit is also self-contained, monitored, so remotely monitored, so we can always check in on it. And then there's the reliance on statistics. So yeah, we've got our sort of preventative measures in place, but then we've also got the fact that, so I've got a figure in front of me. So there's about 4.7 gigawatts of BESS installed in the UK. So if you think about incidents like Carnegie Road, that was 0.4% of the total installed capacity. Guidance is only increasing, and the only way we can do that is if we collaborate with sort of the locals and the stakeholders in producing those management plans.
Okay, very pertinent question to Councillor Marks. Councillor Benny, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. What's the carbon footprint of building this thing?
I don't have any facts and figures for you off the top of my head, so I'd rather not just speak based on hearsay, but we do have members of our team who have forecast that it's significantly less than the use of non-renewable energy sources like fossil fuels. I mean, obviously, there's some factors that are undeniable in terms of sort of transporting materials, but once these sites are operational, there's a significant drop.
Well, that's not very reassuring. You don't know what the carbon footprint of this is, and I was then going to ask you, did it include your car journey here today? Because I assume you all came by car. My next question is, how much of your industry is based on government subsidy? Because as a taxpayer, I want to know where my money's going and how much of my tax money is propping up these schemes that don't stack up on their own.
So all renewable schemes now are not subsidised. They're all commercial projects. back since sort of 2016 when subsidies came to an end. That's when sort of PACE was established, because prior to that all our experience has come from building subsidy-driven sites. As technology's moved forward and panels have got cheaper to produce, etc., it's made what was a subsidy-required project now commercially viable to stand on its own 2 feet.
I hate to disagree with you there. As I walked out the door this morning, I opened the post and OVO Energy had sent me my solar panel money for my last quarter. They pay me 71 pence a unit, but I buy it back from the grid at 39p.
So that's
so with that, this is not. Yeah. So with that, somebody is subsidising my electricity. Now, all these figures, I truly feel a fudge. You're bringing things from China. Are you taking into account the shipping costs? You keep talking about green issues. I don't see very much green with this, to be truthful. I think it's an agenda that's being pushed very, very much on us, that the numbers do not stack up, because I've only got to look at my OVO statement and see that you're paying me more than I pay you, and that does not work. If you were a commercial market and in a real commercial world, without government subsidy, you would not stand on your own 2 feet. And I'm surprised at the answer you gave me.
Okay, yeah, just sort of add to that. I mean, we do have sort of a very extensive technical team. We are a smaller based company, but we do have a team that's sort of covering all of those factors. We are the development representatives, so there is, I'd rather not give you misinformation, because I think it's quite harmful when people are misinformed. We are considerate of all of that, ethical guidelines, procurement, making sure we're choosing the right contractors. But effectively, we are here to speak to sort of the merits of the planning application today and what we've got in front of you.
Also, just to add, obviously the NPPF provides the overarching planning guidance to local authorities, and it's very clear that when determining planning applications for renewable energy, the need is demonstrated and that significant weight should be given. So that's the clear government advice relative to weight of renewable energy projects. Thank you.
You may, Councillor Benny, listen intently.
I mean, the NPPF, we do a planning every week, as I'm sure you do, good people do for a living. But it also says very clearly up there, on balance, it is considered that identified benefits would result in the proposed development. There is two sides to every argument, and just because it says it's policy in the NPPF does not mean that there's not a counter policy that would outweigh that. And that is how planning works. It's not black and white, it's 50 shades of grey, and you're just quoting one very small aspect of a policy at me when I know that there is a totally different aspect to that policy.
I completely understand that, and hence the planning officer's report provides a balanced, detailed assessment relative to the entirety of the NPPF, which I'll just point to additionally. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Carry on.
Great. I believe one of you said that this site had been carefully selected. I believe it was you, the lady on the end. Why did you select? I mean, East Anglia is the breadbasket of the country. Always has been. It's been known for that for years. And why did you select an agricultural area to cover this over with solar farms? There is far, far worse land in the whole of the British Isles that you could place this. What made you choose a rural area in an agricultural area and think it is acceptable to dump this on these people who live here?
I very much understand the concerns that are being raised, and we go through a very detailed technical exercise in terms of site search. Considerations relate to proximity to the grid. We're looking at all the planning considerations relative to individual sites. We're considering aspects to do with the technical ability, screening, planning policy, the availability of a supportive landowner, such for that a scheme can come forward. And then relative to the site study area, we've produced a detailed site search. We've forensically analysed the availability of land in the study area. We've considered good practice. We've followed government policy relative to methodology. There isn't set requirements to provide site search assessments, but we've gone above and beyond and done that. And we've run through all the relative considerations relative to flood risk, provided the most compelling arguments as required by policy relative to agricultural land considerations, sequential tests relative to flooding, avoiding other high designations such as national parks, areas of outstanding natural beauty, etc. So we've set out in detail our full analysis relative to why here considerations.
Thank you for your answer, but I would say that there is natural beauty in Tid St Giles, and I'm sure the residents who are sitting behind me would support that. Fenland has its own character, and just because we don't have national park status does not mean it is valued to us. And I think that maybe more consideration should have been given to this site.
All noted, thank you.
Bring Councillor French in.
Thank you. This sits within North Level District Internal Drainage Board, and the board's straight reach drain, Lady Nun drain and trending drain form boundaries or flows directly through the site. The question I'm asking, are there any pumping stations on the site?
No, they're not.
I'm surprised at your answer, because you're talking about a very large area, and I find it hard to believe. I went out on site inspections around March's pumping stations a couple of weeks ago, and we covered a vast amount of acreage, and I went round 5 pumping stations. So I'm really surprised if there isn't a pumping station within that area.
If I could just add that the planning officer's report at page 22, paragraph 5.15, details there's no objections raised relative to the internal drainage board, so I'll just point that out additionally. Thank you.
I have read that myself, and that's the paragraph that I'm looking at now. They might not have any objections, but they do have several pumping stations.
We'd gone through detailed assessments with the planning team since March 24 relative to all considerations raised. There's been no further information requested of us. There's detailed planning conditions, and the officer's recommendation for refusal reflects that position.
Right, I think I shall come in here now. Sorry, then I'll bring you back, Councillor Gerstner here. I'm going to throw something else in here, animal welfare. The mention of 2,000 sheep that may graze in there at any one time. In the event of a fire or a flood, but more probably a fire, what's your exit strategy, and have you got one to get these sheep out? Because we need to look at animal welfare here as well. Thank you.
We haven't yet got a grazing management plan together for this project, but animal welfare will be high on the agenda when we bring that together.
Yeah, but but you're the ones who mentioned the sheep, and you haven't got a plan together yet. But how are you going to get whatever plan you're going to get? You say, well, I'm going to have 4 sheepdogs and get 500 sheep each, whatever. But there is no. What exit plan have you got? I mean, you see, you haven't got one, which is fine. I understand that. But these sheep, 2,000 sheep, have got to go through 1 gate, 2 gates, 3 gates. And that is one of the big reasons for me. You know, we can't let them obviously perish, can we? Because obviously if there's grazing, if the sheep are there, there's going to be long grass. And obviously, as you well know, grass goes on with the heath fires. What we've seen in Thetford this week, acres and acres go up in minutes. And I don't think this has really been thought about either, to be honest, but I'll sit and listen. Thank you. Right, I'll bring in Councillor Gerstner for another go.
Thank you. I'm an electronics engineer by trade, and I'm a very good electronics engineer, even I will say so myself. So we're going to talk about solar panels. I'm not an expert on solar panels. The efficiency of a solar panel is only good when it's brand new. It drops off in its efficiency factor by 1% on average per year. So your output from the solar panels, megawatts, gigawatts, whatever watts you want to use, is only as good as that efficiency factor at the very beginning. That doesn't take into account what you've just said, produced in China, shipped from China. They could be 12 months old before they're even used. Okay? So we have this cumulative effect of the efficiency factor that in 40 years' time, which you claim that the solar panel is going to be there, will have probably lost 40% of their efficiency factor at that stage. So we'll be producing nowhere near the amount of electricity that you're claiming at the very beginning. And we'll move on to energy in the UK. We already have quite a lot of resilience within the UK of environmentally friendly electricity production, and that is in offshore wind farms. On average, solar panels efficiency factor is between 20 and 22% of output. A wind turbine, good, bad or indifferent, I'm not saying they're environmentally friendly, are between 30 and 40% output, okay? So a wind turbine is double, roughly, the output efficiency factor of solar panels. Our resilience in UK energy terms, security terms, is very much now complete, because we find that some days wind turbine energy is producing 80% of the country's needs in electricity terms.
So is this a question to the applicants eventually?
So, okay, so can you explain to me about, again, solar panels in comparison to wind turbines, please?
Okay, I'm just going to take the first part of the question about the degradation of panels. So the first thing, we base our models based on a 40-year lifetime of the project. The degradation figure is actually 0.4% over time. I think and also we're a development team, so we're not the modelling team, but we make those models based on 25 years when the degradation starts. They don't start to degrade until they're fully commissioned, so there'll be regular maintenance checks on site to make sure that the efficiency of the panels are monitored regularly.
Thanks, and I'd just take us back to the MPPF as well, that's not requiring applicants to demonstrate overall need. It's taken as a given that there's a need for renewable energy projects and that need carries significant weight in the planning balance. Thank you.
Did you want to come back?
Just one more thing then. So, going on to a previous question, we already now, I'm stating the fact to you, import 60, I'm talking about the cumulative effect, not yours in particular, okay, degrades that figure even more. Would you agree?
Yeah, so I can come in here. So at present, the percentage of agricultural land in the UK that's occupied by solar farms is about 0.08%. Taking even the highest estimates to hit the UK's 2030 net zero targets, that would need to increase to approximately 1% of all of the UK's agricultural land. If you look at the most recent government report relating to this, which is the land use consultation published in February 2025, the government predicts that there'll be no net loss of food production arising as a result of the land use change from agricultural to solar because of innovations in the industry. And I suppose it comes down to the fact that things like the diversification of farming by introducing things like solar schemes are key to providing that economic boost to the farming industry to allow innovation and diversification. Thank you.
I'd just add as well that the officer's report at paragraph 10.23 covers food production as well in terms of assessment in the planning balance. Thank you.
Did you want to come back for one more go? Then we're going to move on. No? Okay. So I think we've all had a good... Oh, Councillor Miverton. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to go back to the question about the fire risks. Did you say the units were self-contained units?
Apologies, could you repeat that?
Back to the question about the risk and prevention of fires. Did you say the solar battery storage units were self-contained?
Yes.
Okay, and there is no fire prevention measures within those units if there was to be a fire within them?
Yeah. Yeah, so each one has a fire suppression system built in.
Okay, thank you. My other question is about the, I think it was Ms. Callum, is that right? You mentioned that your company is apart from Clean Energy UK Limited, is a cradle-to-grave, that's the word you used, yeah, company. Now, how long has this company been in operation, please?
Since 2017.
Okay, have you, thank you. So you haven't actually decommissioned any units you've put together?
We haven't decommissioned any as of yet, and the market as a whole hasn't really seen any decommissioning because solar's only been around for sort of 20 years so far, so there hasn't really been the decommissioning of projects as of yet, just because of the timeline of the technology.
But if I could just add, the planning system does have conditions that are very used to dealing with long-term projects. We have conditions relative to decommissioning, so it's a standard part of the planning process to allow for those future decommissioning matters to be closely controlled by condition, and those conditions will be enforceable.
Okay, can you please tell us what's going to happen in 42 years' time? What's going to happen to these batteries and solar panels and every other thing that goes with it?
Yeah, sure. So the materials used are nearly entirely recyclable. So as Callum mentioned, the solar arrays themselves are 96% recyclable. Similar with batteries, you know, there are British recycling facilities that deal with large-scale battery arrays. The construction methods that are used in solar panels are not intrusive, so the land quality on the site doesn't degrade. So the decommissioning process is actually quite straightforward, and the site is then left in a condition that can be used for agricultural purposes immediately once the farm itself has been decommissioned.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mivenden. Councillor Marks?
Can you just clarify that last comment? It's returned to agricultural use. If you've got sheep on it, it's already being used for agricultural use. Yeah. Are you saying that it's that, or it will be able to be cropped properly thereafter? Because looking at land that stands fallow for a period of time, and especially being covered over by an area that's big, like you're talking, I find it very hard to believe that this land is suddenly going to be absolutely prosperous and going to be growing crops fantastically again. You know, I think you're saying all agricultural, but I don't think you're being very clear on what you're actually expecting that land to produce or yield straight after you pick up all, and the amount of stuff that you've got to pick up. So you're going to be pulling piles out of grounds and all the rest of it. So you're going to be bringing clay to the top and all the rest of it. So I'm just interested.
Sure, yeah. So the piling that's used in the solar arrays is relatively shallow, so it doesn't interfere with the soil itself. And in fact, there's quite a few studies that have shown that the soil quality improves over the lifetime of solar farms being in place. So the use of the land for arable purposes following the decommissioning of the solar farm is expected.
And just to add, there's commentary in the statutory consultee who's commented on this matter, and there's additionally condition 4 which relates to soil management plans as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I find that astounding because around here we have something called a fen blow, and we also have people now that are ploughing and are pulling up clay from a very, very close proximity to the top. And over 40 years, you're saying that this is not going to make any difference to the land itself. You know, I'm sorry, I do find that quite hard to believe.
Okay, yeah, okay. I think I think we're going to leave it with you after you. You can have one more go, Councillor French, then we're going to call it.
Thank you. You said that your company started in 2017. How many schemes like this have you actually done?
We've brought about 8 projects forward. We have 4 going into construction this year, but in terms of construction, these are our first 4 coming through to construction now.
So you haven't actually constructed any as to date?
Not as pace, but my colleagues previously who set up the company have.
Do you want to come back at all, Councillor French, or have you finished?
No, I just think we're going to be, no, I wouldn't.
No. Thank you very much for that. Just nicely, you get... So, members, questions, clarifications to officers? Yeah, Councillor Benny, please do.
Thank you very much. How did you arrive at the balanced view that this gets an approval or a recommendation to approve. How fine was this balance? Because a lot of what I've heard today is based on consultants who, let's be truthful, you could give 10 different sets of consultants the same data and you'd get 12 different answers. And there is also, if we wanted to build a garage near a house and it was building out into the open countryside, we would be told that is detrimental to the countryside. And here we are covering 172 football pitches with glass, ruining the soil underneath, damaging the local economy, damaging the local view and the people who live there. How did you arrive at a balanced view that this needs an approval on it?
Yeah, please do your best to answer that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So in terms of national policy, the NPPF has a significant presumption in favour of renewable energy. So weighing that against the loss of BMV land, for instance, the loss of BMV land within the NPPF is a consideration. However, the NPPF and planning practice guidance state that that BMV land shouldn't be the predominant factor in terms of assessing applications of this nature. There is a preference for use of non-BMV land or using land which is of lower value. However, it's not, it's the weight, the NPPF is clear in terms of the weight that is given to renewable energy, that is more important than BMV land in terms of the references within it. I've also looked through various appeal decisions relating to planning appeal decisions relating to the provision of renewable energy, solar farms in particular, which are on BMV land, for instance, and the majority and the vast majority of the most recent ones are appeals that are being allowed because of the need for renewable energy, and that's basically trumping considerations in terms of BMV and so on. So in terms of national policy guidance, even the local plan, it says, you know, that the council support renewable energy developments. It lists impact on agricultural land as a consideration. There's nothing weighty in terms of policy that would suggest that this should be refused.
I'm sure you'd like to come back, Councillor Venning.
I would, please. Firstly, you haven't answered my question. How much of a knife-edge balance was this? That was actually my question with all the bits surrounding it. But also, you said that most of the appeals have gone in that way. But I take it from that not all of them have. Have we had some dismissed appeals in this scenario as well? But I would like my first question answered, please, if we could.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the officer's report clearly puts down the LPA's position in relation to the application. I will eventually answer the question to a point, but just for context. Case law is clear that a local plan will always have policies that pull in different directions. You know, class example, as you said, a garage inside a commercial in rural area, for example. You know, we have policies that say X, Y, and Z for different types of development. So there's different weights attributed to the different policies, the different pulls, the different pushes. If we were to strictly, you know, stick to the design policy, you'd probably approve nothing because there'll be harm on the character. So I know, to a certain extent, I know I'm talking, you know, I'm teaching subjects, and I don't, as members know, I like to give the whole position rather than just, you know, jump to the point. So this is what has happened with this recommendation. We have a policy that supports renewable. We have policies that try to protect things such as, you know, the character of the air, etc. The officer's report highlights and talks about those different considerations. Case law is also clear it's up to the decision maker to give the weight to different material considerations that they see fit, as long as it's not an unreasonable position. So, you know, you can't take into account something that is not a material consideration, or you can't ignore something that which is accepted to be a very big material consideration. So, for example, with something like this, you couldn't ignore the government's clear stance in the NPPF about the need for renewable energy. You wouldn't be able to just say, I don't agree with that there's a need for renewable energy, therefore I don't support the application or concerns, but there's the balancing exercise. For the LPA, we've come to a recommendation I think that is pretty... I think the conclusion in the officer's report says something along the lines of, you know, while we acknowledge that there is harm, you know, yeah.
There is.
I'm not sure if I'd say from the LPA that we would say it was significant harm, but there is definitely harm from the development and conflict with policies. In our position, when you do the balancing exercise, the weight towards approval is pretty significant. But that is our balancing exercise, and this scheme, you know, this isn't an allocated site for housing, you know, where, you know, there's a lot of policy that supports it automatically, such as the harm on the character of the area has already been accepted by the council in bringing forward a local plan. This is an application that is a balancing exercise because there are push and pulls. But I think for the LPA, we are strongly confident in the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, please do.
If I can turn out some of my...
I hate to chase you on this one, but you still haven't answered my question. Where would you put the pivot point? 40-60, 50-50, 75-25? Where would you put that pivot point where it's going, you've gone down on the side of approval rather than on sides of refusal?
Chairman, we can't give a figurative thing because that's not how it works, but I would say, sorry, we can't give a figurative, like, definitive position because that's not how planning works, you know, but I would say we are pretty significantly secure in the recommendation that the benefits outweigh the harm. Yeah. You can read between the lines on that. I'm going to translate that into your own weight if you want.
I think we've gone as far with that one as we can. Councillor Gerstner, after just it's questions, clarifications to officers. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. You may correct me on this, I may be wrong. The National Planning Policy Framework expects local authorities to protect and enhance valued landscapes and sites of biodiversity and recognise the character and beauty of the countryside and the benefits best and most versatile for the farmland in their policies and decisions. Am I correct in that statement?
You're absolutely correct, and I think the committee report gives consideration to those matters.
So going on from Councillor Benny's question, surely much more weight should have been given to the National Planning and Policy Framework in this matter.
Through you, Chairman. I would suggest that that paragraph is quite a high-level generalised position within the NPPF. The NPPF goes on to give significant weight to renewable energy. I think it comes back to that point, you know, the officer's report highlights the concerns, you know, there are matters around BNG, etc., and all those sort of things that are covered separately. I think, you know, you're asking to a certain extent the same question Councillor Benny worded slightly differently, you know. We're very confident within our recommendation, the weighting of the exercises we've done. At the end of the day, decision makers, it's in your gift to give the weight as long as it's reasonable as you see fit. And I'll highlight again, as long as it's reasonable. But, you know, we're very confident with our recommendation.
Thank you for the answer. It's just that that is the beginning paragraph of that policy. That's what I'm stating. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very relative statement that you've made, Councillor Gerstner, and it absolutely is. Anybody got any more questions for officers? No, thank you very much. So now everybody, I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect to the material considerations relevant to the application. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And Councillor Gerstner would like to speak first, I do believe, and then followed by Councillor Benny.
Well, we've heard the applicant. We've heard some comments here. I'm very concerned on this particular application in front of me of the amount of land, agricultural land, agricultural land being taken up by thousands and thousands of solar panels. May not be materialistic, made in China, shipped from China, not carbon neutral, plenty of CO2 involved. I disagree with the applicant about recycling of solar panels. And I'll also bring up the fact of lithium batteries, which again, I'm a pretty good expert on. Lithium is not the safest or easiest product to produce. It's mined predominantly in Africa. I won't go into the details of how it's mined because that's not relevant here, but I'm quite sure people know. It is not easily recyclable. In fact, it is very difficult to recycle lithium, along with cobalt and other materials that go in those batteries. I agree with the applicant that there has been very few instances of fire. We had only recently at Fenland District Council, through officers, have approved a battery storage unit in my area. The applicant has put into place water facilities. They have consulted with fire authorities. There is an element of risk there, and as the applicant said, each unit would have its own fire precaution mitigation placed in it. So they are trying to keep within the framework of the rules and regulations. But I will go back to the need for these solar panels prioritising over prime agricultural land. As I've stated before, in the UK, we have sufficient resilience in environmentally friendly, at the moment, production of electricity. That's not to say we don't need more, but at certain times we have more than enough because they switch wind turbines off. So the need for this, I don't think, outweighs the harm that can be done to both the environment and to that prime agricultural land. And I go back to the other statistic where we're already importing 60% of our food into this country. The statistic which they came up with, which sounded very small, 0. whatever it was percent of agriculture, it's the cumulative effect. Also, I go back to the other statement I made, where wind turbines, good, bad or indifferent, are much more efficient than solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you, very comprehensive. Councillor Benny, I'm sure you've got something to add to that.
What do I leave out? I mean, this whole green energy business to me is fudging of figures. I see it here at the council from reports we have. I mean, Britain produces less than 2% of the world emissions. If we get to 50-50, or if we get to 2050 and we've got 50% of emissions, it makes no difference. China is building power stations every month. We've just closed or we've stopped the Drax power station using British coal or imported coal, wherever it came from. And it's now considered green energy because we import wood pellets on a ship, which is very high carbon footprint, to bring wood pellets to burn in the Drax power station. This is driven by a political agenda. And no planning is not political, but this argument is based on bad evidence to me. That we need to rush into this. We are rushing the wrong way into this. I don't think this is the answer. I don't think solar farms are. If we're going to go for supposed green energy, then I think tidal is better than solar and wind. I've quite followed this quite a bit. We had a report last year. I think there were 2 or 3 days in the country we were sufficient in green energy. But that's in the middle of the summer when people drink cold drinks instead of have the kettle on every day. They don't have the heating on. The rest of the time, we still need fossil fuels. And we are turning our back on those at a time when we cannot. We haven't got the technology here. This is not the right technology to fill the gap of coal, gas and oil. So I have very little faith in the reports that come to this. But put that to one side. I look at this is prime agricultural land. We are the breadbasket of the country. And this is it's marked up there as not being grade 1 agricultural land. But you only have to go and look up north. They have sheep on fields up there because they can't get the yields, and you cannot get the yields up north. Your tonnage is down. You know, you get 5 acres of 5 tons of wheat out of a field here, you'll get 2.5, 3 up in Northumbria because the grade of land is not as good. The weather's different. That's why they have sheep up there. This is wasting good agricultural land on sheep. There's homogenists that go around and analyse the nitrogen levels in soil. And they do that. It takes years to pull that land back to a point where the nitrogen levels are too good to turn that back into good agricultural land. We don't know that this technology is solid and sound. It does produce electricity, but I don't think this is the answer to it. And then when we come to where it is placed, I think this is in totally the wrong place. I think this is a very rural area. They are a blot on the landscape. And I think the people that live here should be listened to. Unfortunately, it's not a city, because if this was London, this wouldn't get this far. Because the people in cities punish the people in the country, and they push us around and inflict these things on rural people. And they say, well, we did a consultation, but we didn't get many responses, and the response is, well, we can overlook them. Well, when you take the size of Tid St Giles, you are not going to get the amount of objections, but it doesn't mean those people are wrong. In my opinion, those people are very right. I would not want this near me, and I will not be supporting this application today.
Okay, very comprehensive, Councillor Benny. I'm taking Councillor Marks, then I'm taking Councillor French.
Couldn't agree more with Councillor Benny. I have to say, stealing one of his words or one of his comments, blot on the landscape, 1985, there was actually a film made about it, or a series, and I have to say, I believe this is what it's going to be. I went the other week to try and go to a wind farm to deliver, not to a solar farm, and was told, oh, you just drive down the road and it's there on the left. You can't miss it. The size of that, there is no way you probably won't miss it from Wisbeach, you know, in all honesty. We are, from the moon. But, you know, we are imposing something on good agricultural land that could quite easily go somewhere else. And it could easily, by going somewhere else, not take up the valuable food land and production that we've got here, there today. And the other thing we've got to think about is the actual people behind you. What's it going to do to their lives during construction? There's going to be thousands of lorries going in and out of that site. I know we'll be told, oh, there's a management plan for this. Then there's going to be sheep on site. We've got the fire risk. We've heard about that. If, 2 fire engines, should that suddenly ignite and that land go, that can go for miles. I am really concerned this has just not been thought about. I fully support what South Holland have already said, and said they've turned it down. And again, I will not be supporting this at all.
Okay, I've got nothing to add to the debate, but I will bring Councillor French in as she has. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Marks and Benny, but we'd also like to add, there's going to be massive light pollution. I just don't understand the environmental department not discussing light pollution. But what concerns me more than anything else, this company does not have a track record of actually producing one, and that really does concern me, and I will not be supporting it.
Okay, Councillor Gerstner, one more go.
Just one more. In support of solar panels, which I've said to before, I have done in the past, national policy, why don't you go out and put 20,000 solar panels on the roofs of houses or industrial buildings instead of using prime agricultural land? All the houses are there, all the industrial units are there, and I've seen some massive solar panels on factory units and industrial units. Rolls-Royce, Bentley, all these people have got massive solar panels. Please go out and find somewhere else. Thank you.
Okay, I think probably the point's taken. Okay, right. I think we've nearly done this debate. I don't think anybody else has got to add to it, so I'm going to close it now. Officers, have you anything to add?
Through you, Chairman, just a couple of points of clarity. Firstly, that the NPPF doesn't delineate or break down or give different value to different types of renewable energy. So whether you have a personal opinion on one may or may not be more valuable or more effective, that's a moot point for the termination of this application, because the value that should be given to renewable energy is the same irrespective of the form of energy production. Alongside that, whether or not you consider we're energy safe, etc. The NPPF doesn't, and the NPPF says we don't. The applicant is not required to show a need for renewable energy. It's just an accepted point, and the NPPF explicitly says that. So, just for a couple of points that were raised in the debate, that I just think need to be conscious of when coming to a recommendation, because obviously don't want to be misdirecting ourselves. Thank you, Chairman.
No, I think we've made it very clear, and I think members have got to steer where members I think this may go. But so we're coming up with a recommendation. Do I have a proposer to go with officer recommendation to grant planning permission? I'm looking very intently and I can't see anyone who wants to support that. So obviously that's failed. So I'm looking for another proposal, please. Councillor Benny, what are you proposing, please?
I'm proposing that we go against the officer's recommendation and we refuse this application.
And reasons for doing so?
That's why I put my hand up.
Good.
The reasons for this, and I think all councillors, if you've got reasons, I think these should be added into this, but the main one is this is a balance. It clearly states that on the officer's report in its closing statement. And planning is not black and white. Planning is shades of grey. Another analogy I was given in planning training was you put all the answers in a bowl and you pull out the answer that you feel is most relevant, and it's subjective. How one person views it is one way and how other people view that is another. Personally, I think the loss of agricultural land here, it may not be grade 1 land, but the loss of this in a very rural community is paramount to this. I have concerns over safety. We only have to look at LA in America, where someone drops a barbecue match and the whole place burns down. At this time of year, it's very dry, very volatile out there, and it's too far away from fire service. I think the safety aspects, and that affects residents, wildlife. You've got other cattle, sheep out there. If they're trapped, they need looking after, as you said, Mr. Chairman. So I feel that this is not the right place for this because of the siting of it. I think it's in the wrong place because of the land. I think it's in the wrong place for the people who have to live there. I think the construction traffic will bring a detrimental quality of life to the people who live in Clyd St Giles and the surrounding area. For that reason, I think this is I wouldn't say it's a bad application because I think it's just not in the right place. And I'm welcome to take any other people. I can see Councillor Marks has got his hand up, that come up with good planning reasons. Why not as well?
Come to Councillor Marks. You finished your reasons, and I'm absolutely enamoured by those reasons and agree with them for that. Councillor Marks, have you got anything to add to it? Or do you want to second it?
No, well, I'll happily second it, but I think we also need to mention drainage by covering that. I mean, by covering 140 football pitches, 140 football pitches over, I think there is a major concern that we're going to overwhelm any dikes, ditches or whatever, and pump stations nearby because of that. So I think that certainly does need listing down. We've said about fire already, and equally, I don't actually believe in what we're being told about the economic benefits with labour, because you grow X number of thousands or hundreds of acres of land, crop, that takes it into mills and stuff like that. All we're going to be there is window cleaning at the end of the day and cutting a bit of grass, from what I can see. So I don't see that brings economic benefit longer term as well. And I think the last thing, 40 years is a long, long time. We have no guarantee regarding what happens in 40 years regarding recycling. We don't know, and this company may get bought out, it may go bankrupt. We have no consistency in knowing what they are like going forward, and there doesn't seem to be any bond mentioned as to what happens in 40 years regarding that. So in year 39, if it's going to cost multi-millions to recycle or whatever, the likelihood is they probably will go out of business, and I think we need to build that as a concern as well. What then happens? Because we as taxpayers will be picking up that bill. So, well, you'll be probably. All right, the next generation, shall I say? But at the end of the day, it's something. Why are we leaving this to our children to pick up? Yes, we're hearing about recyclable energy and all the rest of it at the minute, but that may be in 20 years' time something totally different. We've had electric cars. We're now moving on to hydrogen within 5 years.
And also, I'd like to bring up the animal welfare issue as well, because that's paramount to me as well, because obviously sheep, everything will perish in a very few minutes if there was one small spark on dry grass. The lot would be gone. So that's a condition. That's a reason for me. Anyway, Councillor French, there's not much more we can add.
Yeah, I would pick up Councillor Marks with regard to drainage. That is a must go in there, because if you actually read the full report, it's not just when the dikes are full, it's also when they're dry, which can cause problems as well. So I think that is a must. But definitely, please include light pollution.
Okay, so I'm more than happy for the reasons given by various councillors. We're deliberating for now. Matt.
Through Chairman, Steve might be able to comment this, but I'm not sure if it's all become more of a debate than a proposal.
We've got a proposal. We've got a proposal, it seems to me, from Councillor Benny, with the reasons added by other councillors to refuse this application. It could well be seconded by Councillor Marks or Councillor Gerstner for that matter, and all we need is some clarification on that, and I'm happy with all the reasons given. Sorry? Okay. So I'm clear. Okay. Councillor Benny has put a proposal forward, which I'm happy with. It's been added to by Councillor Marks and various other councillors, including myself and Councillor Gerstner. And I'm very happy with the reasons why Fenland District Council Planning Committee will go against this application. All it needs to be done is to clarify who's going to second Councillor Benny's reasons for doing so, and then we will go to a vote. That's the clarity of it all, and it's as clear as day follows night. Thanks. So now, let's bring that's it. Let's bring Stephen in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind members to be mindful that any reasons for refusal will need to be supported by evidence. So, for example, fire risk is added to the reasons for refusal.
Yeah.
The report from the officers, as a result of consultation, indicates there is no fire risk, provided the appropriate conditions are satisfied. So if we go to appeal, you need to satisfy an inspector that the Fire Rescue Authority is wrong and incorrect in its...
Well, I'll come in there. I'm quite happy if this goes to appeal. I'm quite happy to represent Fenland District Council at the appeal hearing and put Fenland District Council Planning Committee's decision under scrutiny and will convince the inspector, hopefully, that we are absolutely right. I'm happy to do that and put that on record. Benny.
Yeah. You've only got to look at the internet. Teslas catch fire every day of the week. They're a small scale battery to what's on offer here. And if you want to strengthen the reasons, I know national planning policy overrules local plan, but LP3, building in the open countryside. The minute you put a spade in the ground, you are building in the open countryside. And this is good agricultural ground. It is attractive and with its own natural beauty. And this is going to destroy that natural beauty that is there. So LP3, building in the open countryside, I know it will be superseded by the MPPF, but that comes into it. And batteries, electric batteries, do have a history of catching fire.
Thank you. I'm sorry, as part of the decision making now, the proposal, I've got to ask the head of planning, is a sequential test required in the respect of the use of agricultural land being necessary for this particular application?
do you want to answer that? Because we're going round in circles now. There's a proposal forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, through you, I'm be honest, I'm not quite exactly sure what the question is because, yeah, as I said earlier, there's not a need to demonstrate a need. Too many needs really in one sentence. And obviously there has been a process that's been provided by the applicant to show that there has been consideration to location. So I just don't want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
It's a sequential test to prove that a greenfield site is needed over a brownfield site.
I think in terms of the size, the scale of a development like this, it would be clear that there wouldn't be brownfield land of that size to accommodate this type of development within the district anyway.
Yeah, I think. Feature on the back of that, I think there's an inference that isn't needed. There's for two reasons. One, there's a lot of protection about specific areas, including Greenbelt. We don't benefit of any of that protection here in this district. And as my colleague just said, it would be, I think very unlikely you'd find a brownfield site that was appropriate for redevelopment of this scale, where you wouldn't maybe consider there would be a better form of redevelopment and more benefits or balancing, exercise, it being a highly sustainable location. So you'd think that it should be used for use X rather than Y. There is a given that these will be in less sustainable locations and, different sites. So there's nowhere explicitly said in sort of process you're supposing that we need to go to, I don't think.
Okay, I'm just going to bring in Councillor French and then I'm going to move on.
Thank you. I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, we're going round in circles here. You've got a proposal, you've got a seconder, and you've got your reasons. So can we crack on?
It's exactly what I've said 5 minutes ago, Councillor French. Right, just to clarify, we've got a proposal to go against officer recommendation to refuse this application. It's proposed by Councillor Benny, seconded by Councillor March. Can I have a show of hands?
Can I comment on it first? I think you need to give me an opportunity to set a plan with clarity and to comment. Yeah, I think the process requires that. Thank you, Chairman. I've taken down bullet points of what I consider seem to have been the 7 issues that have been raised and been put forward. Obviously, it's been put forward as forming the reason for refusal. Members know we need to be able to demonstrate harm for every reason for refusal. If we can't, members have given opinions, which isn't necessarily the same as demonstrating harm. Just like I might have an opinion on something, doesn't mean I then would refuse it on that, because if I can't demonstrate that, through delegated authority, there is a need for that balancing exercise. So I'm just going to list off the 7 points that I've picked up, just to make sure I've got them all, because obviously, if we send out a decision notice and then members are like, well, what about, we said Y, X or Y, I wouldn't want to miss that.
Yeah, carry on
also,
then.
alongside that, I just want to provide a bit of comment on some of them. So the first one I've got is loss of the agricultural land. Council, support flags that is there is harm in that in theory and policy, but it's a balancing exercise. So,
it's fair.
Yeah, it has some planning merit, I would say. And these aren't necessarily the order they were said. So I'm sorry if I jump around a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
The next one was about conditions requiring the land to be put back in the future. Basically, we can't require that. That is how the planning system deals with solar farms. Having a reason for refusal based on that, I would say, is 100% guaranteed of a cost claim, because it is accepted through the planning system at the moment. That's how the system. Councillor Marks is right about we can't guarantee what will happen in the future, but as that is how at the moment the system deals with it, whether we like it or not, it'd be a very dangerous position to look to trying to go against what the system is built up to deal with it at the moment.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think we need to be clear. we're giving a number of reasons why. I know Stephen's going to say, you know, you can't point at one, but surely we need to give the number of reasons we're given goes to the inspector, and then he will make his decision. At least if we give our reasons behind it, you're almost pulling that one out and saying, well, that one you'll get sort of like costs or whatever. But the whole, you know, this is a big story, not a highlighted headline. So yes, we've got 7 points. Some of those may not be relevant, but the inspector needs to get our feeling of what we're saying here today.
Okay.
The chairman, I'd say, the reasons for refusal, whether it's 1 or 10, need to be able to stand up on their own interrogation. They are what the council has determined an application on. Concerns that may weigh against the scheme are not reasons for refusal. They are part of the consideration of the planning balancing exercise, but they don't form a reason for refusal, and that is a materially different factor. So, and it obviously, when a scheme is an application is overturned, you don't get the full report that you would normally have, where you might say this isn't great, but isn't what reason for refusal, and then that feeds into, you know, so we're talking about a housing scheme with garden sizes not being perfect. You might not refuse it on that, but that could weigh against the reason for refusal why you're refusing on something else. But obviously we don't have that narrative with an overturn, but that does not mean we can add that narrative and that thought process into a reason for refusal. It needs to be able to, each reason for refusal, and some things can amalgamate together, but a lot of these that have been suggested to me don't naturally correlate with each other. They would in theory have to be their own reason for refusal, and then the council would have to be able to defend this sole issue, you know, through being robustly interrogated, potentially a scheme like this at public inquiry. So I'm just giving you my professional advice, members. You, as always, you can go with decisions that you come with, but I'm here to try to protect the council, to give you my professional opinion. So,
Okay.
If I come back in, I mean,
We need to move on.
If we're looking to strengthen the reasons, I think that, you know, Tid St Giles as an agricultural area, it is an area of outstanding natural beauty. That beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and therefore, if we consider that to be an area of outstanding natural beauty, which I think the committee would agree with me we do, this would not be allowed in Regent's Park. This would not be allowed in the Peak District. This would not be allowed in the Sycamore Gap. So why are we being sold short? And I very much believe that this will be very harmful to the rural setting of Tid St Giles.
to you, Chairman, if I can just carry on with discussing what I've done, and then hopefully we can talk about it in the round rather than maybe trying to pick at things. So, example, flooding. As you can see by the elevations in front of you, there is still ground below the solar panels. Conditions requiring the development to wash its own face in relation to flooding can be imposed. Whether or not they could then do that in the future, and that would then mean that the deep scheme could never come forward, is a different matter to whether or not that should be able to be stand as a reason for refusal. Fire risk, again, I would, we've consulted the consultee who have said it's okay. And what I would say is that, once again, there is no government stance against this, otherwise we wouldn't be able to support applications like this. So just having a concern in relation to fire risk doesn't evidence harm. Limited economic benefits, what I would say is that that's something that weighs against the scheme rather than being a reason for refusal, because what you're saying is actually the benefits are limited, and therefore I think that's not giving any value to the scheme. It's not a reason to say this is acceptable or unacceptable. And what I would say, or to try and pick the last two, I don't think we can say it's an area of outstanding natural beauty because they're set down by government. But what I can accept, or not accept, is that what Councillor Bennett said earlier, which was the final bullet point I've taken, is about the impact on the character of the area. Yeah. It's not about it being outstanding because they are laid down in legislation, but if members consider the impact on the character of the area outweighs the benefits of the energy, that's within their gift. The officer's report acknowledges that there is impact on the character of the area. So while I don't necessarily agree with the balancing exercise the members are doing, there is planning merit in that concern, I would suggest, members. So I'll be honest, my advice would be members have only raised two issues that have true planning merit, which are the loss of valuable land, agricultural land and the impact on the countryside. They could be put together as one reason for refusal if members wanted, and where we would say that the benefits of the harm that we acknowledge in the officer's report does not overcome the benefits of the energy renewable. The other matters, professionally, as always, it's in your gift and thank you for the decision, but my professional advice is that would put us in a very difficult position at appeal. And as you've heard me say before, members, it's better to have one very good reason for refusal than 6 or 7 weak reasons for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I think that's very comprehensive.
To Matt, before you issue this decision notice, then could we have a look at the reasons, and could we leave it for you to rate these reasons up as based on what members have said for us, and then we can have a look at them like we do when we go the other way and we approve stuff for conditions.
Yes and no. As always, when members at any committee overturn officers and it's written up for refusal, we draft the reasons for refusal based on recommendation. Members are not expected, I'll advise you not to quote policies even when you're looking to refuse things, etc. The problem is when you have your vote now, you are voting on, at the moment, 7 points that I've noted, and I just want to confirm that they were all of them, and we would have to then bring forward between 1 and 7 reasons for refusal that dealt with them, because that's what the committee's determined. Whether or not I think any of them have weight or legs in the future is out of my gift once this vote happens, if that makes sense. Yeah.
This was what I was saying. We could see them if you wrote them up. Are you happy with what we've come up with? Is there anything that you could suggest to us that maybe would strengthen the case in terms of wording to safeguard the council?
Thank you, Chairman. Case law is very clear that when it comes to a refusal, the members have to bring forward the reason for refusal. That is why I can be a lot more helpful when members are looking to approve stuff than when they're looking to refuse. And it often looks like the head of planning and the case officer has been a bit churlish, and that it's actually because of case law ties our hands to a bit. The officer's report only, I would say professionally, only raises 2 real issues with the scheme, which members have raised and discussed today, which are loss of the agricultural land and the impact of the character area. They would be what I would just seem to be the only concerns we have as an LPA. Members have discussed that. Members have concerns about that. Members can give the weight to the balancing exercise. A number of the issues that members have raised with concerns on, the officer's reports looked at. Statutory consultees have either said it's fine or generally we can deal with it through conditions in the future. Case law is clear that we shouldn't be refusing things if you can impose a condition. It may well be that the condition can never be met. As long as there's some reasonable expectation that it can be met, you shouldn't refuse it on it. And then there are things that I think are just more balanced in exercise. The nearest thing to meeting what Councillor Benny's sort of suggestion is that I'm thinking this is off the cuff, and I don't think it will go down very well, and I'm not encouraging this, but to meet the nearest thing that you've suggested would actually be to defer the report, the decision of the application, and for us to bring back a report that dealt solely with those 7 issues with a level of detail. But that's the only way I think we can, as an LPA, support you in the way that Councillor Benny has suggested. We can't informally do it, is the issue.
No, I take that. So your advice to us here is that we go for 2 solid reasons rather than 2 solid and 5 flimsy, which I'm happy to accept that. We were coming to an answer we needed to produce, and therefore we rely on your professional knowledge to steer us in the right direction. And I'm happy to wording wise to have the advice that we just go for a refusal with the 2 reasons that Matt's suggested rather than 7.
Sum it up in a nutshell, that's what I prefer, the 2 solid reasons, and they are material consideration reasons as far as I'm aware. So the committee, I think we're all happy with just the 2 reasons for officers to go away, do the wording, what you think's appropriate. If you could, if I don't know whether you could send me a copy, Councillor Benny and anybody else who wants it, just before the decision notice is sent out. I think that's perhaps where I would like it to go. And I don't think there's anybody else probably who wouldn't. So I'm going to stop that now. So I think everybody just happy with that. Just nod. No more comments, just nod or not. Okay, that's fine. Right. That's fine. So we're going to do, it's simple. We're going to do, we want you to do a new proposal with those two recommendations in the proposal.
Okay, change my proposal. My proposal is we go against officer's recommendation on and refuse this application on the two grounds that we've discussed at great length today, with the wording that Matt has suggested to us today.
That's fine. That's it. So I'm going to do it again. So we're going against officer recommendation proposed by Councillor Benny, seconded by Councillor Marks. With those two reasons, can I have a show of hands?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
So that application has been refused. So, thank you. What we're going to do now is going to break for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, Councillor French, and we're going to be back at before 3 o'clock. Thank you. Right, thank you members for being back on time, very refreshing. So now we'll go back to the agenda item number 4. We'll ask Gavin to present application number 4, FYR 22/08440. Gavin, when you're ready, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Agenda item 4 is a hybrid application comprising an outline with matters committed in respect to access for up to 200 dwellings and associated infrastructure, and then a full application tied to that for essentially the first phase comprising 100 dwellings with full details, including landscaping, public open space, and details of the new access off Sandy Lane. I'd just like to obviously refer to the update report that was circulated yesterday amongst members in relation to some corrections to the report. So just going on to sort of details of the application, there are a number of slides with this presentation just purely because of the sort of complexity of the site being an allocation. So if you could bear with me, I appreciate the last item was a bit long, but I'll get through this as quick as I can. So the site lies at the eastern edge of Wisbeach, comprises approximately 13.8 hectares of reasonably low-lying flat sort of scrubland and agricultural land. It's broadly subdivided into 3 sort of fields, as you can probably see from the aerial picture there, sort of an area of sort of rather dense scrubland and trees at the northern part, and then the 2 belts in the southern sort of half are sort of agricultural fields. There's various sort of commercial farm buildings and residential buildings around the perimeter. Sandy Lane runs across the north of the site, which you can probably just make out there, and Stow Lane runs adjacent along that western boundary, which is a right of way. The southern boundary is bound by internal drainage board drains, a strip of scrubland with mature tree planting, number of TPOs across the site, most notably a line of oaks and ash tree at the eastern end of the central public right of way, which you can probably just make out there running through the centre of the site, the green line, which is known as Woolsoken Walk, and there's some crack willow at the sort of south of the right of way, at the western end of that right of way there. There's some further oaks in the northern half of the site as well, which are also protected. You can just make out there also, right at the far southwest corner off the site there, is the Meadowgate Academy School, and obviously agricultural fields continue on from there. So the site forms part of the East Wisbeach strategic allocation. As you can see, the plan to the left there shows its entirety, and the plan to the right obviously shows how that land lies in Fenland. That's the hatched area there, with the remaining area you can just make out from that pink plan forming part of a policy under Kingsley and West Norfolk Borough Council. So policy LP8 of the Fenland local plan designates that East Wisbeach strategic allocation area. The allocation in its entirety covers about 72 hectares, of which about 48 hectares is within the Fenland area, wherein about 900 homes are envisaged across the plan period, with around 550 to come forward under the King's Lynn area, under their policy F3.1. So the plan here just shows, obviously, bit of a delay. The plan there, edged yellow, shows the actual application site relative to that wider allocation. The entire area falls within Fenland and under the jurisdiction of Cambridgeshire County Council in terms of highways. So this is the East Wisbeach Broad Concept Plan, which has sort of been devised following local plan policy LP7. LP7 requires a broad concept plan to be agreed, and for applications then to sort of follow that broad concept plan that come forward within the allocation. The broad concept plan, as you can see, was jointly agreed by Fenland District Council, Kingsley and West Norfolk Borough Council and Cambridgeshire County Council. And in summary, you can see the main diagram there, which sets out sort of the various land uses, points of access, areas to be safeguarded and enhanced. And you can see this sort of the four rings in the centre there, which is approximately where we are with this planning application and beyond, which looks to sort of secure key infrastructure, such as a community hub, a primary school, local centre, parkland, sports pitches, and obviously housing as well. And there's a belt of existing woodland, as you can see that big green block at the southern end there,
to be retained, as well as existing rights of way which need to seek opportunity for enhancement. The BCP also envisages a loop road system, as you can see from the black dashed line there, to obviously ensure sort of good circulation across the whole allocation. It also proposes the closure of Sandy Lane to through traffic, as well as the necessity to provide large areas of surface water attenuation. I'll come back on to the Sandy Lane closure shortly. So this is a sort of master plan. The application is being considered, and at the same time we do have another planning application in, submitted by Prosperity, Wealth and Development, which commits 300 dwellings on the adjacent parcel, as you can see there, to the sort of the east and the south. That proposal commits 300 dwellings and also outline proposal for a 60-bed care accommodation, a community hub or local centre, and supporting infrastructure. This application, the Prosperity one, isn't quite yet ready for determination, but likely to be imminent, and obviously it's been considered in terms of its linkages to this planning application as well, and how the two could coexist. In respect of this planning application, it's considered that it broadly follows the broad concept plan vision, having regard to sort of the infrastructure it's proposing to deliver, how it's going to connect to parcels, both future parcels and existing parcels as well. Whilst it does recognise there is some conflict with the vision in respect of the stopping up of Sandy Lane, that's explained at sections 10.8 to 10.9 of the report. Just looking at the layout then, so this is a fully committed detail for 100 dwellings on the left picture there, as you can see. That lies in the northwest corner of the site, proposed to be accessed via Sandy Lane, supported by a spine road, which also would include a bus stop eventually. The spine road then leads on to various points to narrower secondary roads. You can see the land to the northeast corner of the site there on the wider site is supposed to be reserved for school land in the future for a primary school. And there's also, as part of the committee detail here, land reserved for a potential future roundabout at Sandy Lane, should it be required in the future to sort of support the wider allocation. So the first committed phase provides for pedestrian and cycle access onto Orchard Drive also, to the southwest, and also onto Sandy Lane. Public rights of way also leading east-west through the centre of the site, being protected, with areas of public open space on either side of it, including an equipped area of play. You can just see at the southern part of that plan to the left. There's also obviously a surface water attenuation proposed right at the southern end of the site there, to handle surface water, as well as some swales at the northern end adjacent to the Sandy Lane area there. In respect of housing, it's considered that there is appropriate on-site parking and manoeuvrability, commensurate to the quantum required under local plan policy LP15, subject to conditions securing cycle stores. Refuse collection is also considered to accord with recap guidance, subject to a final refuse collection strategy to ensure that those serving private roads are supported appropriately. The layout generally affords good levels of amenity for both existing and future occupiers, good separation, and avoiding any significant adverse impacts in terms of overshadowing, overlooking, overbearing. So the outline element, which you can just see there on the right picture to the sort of south of the committed development, is likely to come forward as two subsequent phases, albeit there's a condition requiring commitment and detail to that as part of the outline proposals and conditions. The indicative layout, however, does detail appropriate connections to the first phase, vehicular connection to Orchard Drive and to the Eastern Prosperity development parcel through multiple vehicular and pedestrian cycle connections, and includes also bus stops to obviously encourage and provide opportunities for non-car modes of travel. So the outline element itself is considered a logical extension to that initial phase 1 development, and would be supported by suitable drainage infrastructure and achieve good connectivity to sort of the surroundings. So just a quick detail on the Sandy Lane access. The Sandy Lane access at the moment sort of runs pretty much in a straight way, east to west, and then has quite a sharp northward bend up to Stowe Road and Bush Lane. That's proposed to be sort of curved into the site there. And this follows negotiation with the County Council Transport and Highways Development Management Team, and is supported by a Transport Assessment and Framework Travel Plan. It's considered that the general sort of access arrangements and transport impacts are acceptable, subject to conditions and Section 106 contributions, and a full travel plan is also required. The actual Sandy Lane road itself has been sort of designed to sort of accommodate additional traffic through there, and also have consideration for making sure there's suitable connection through continued footways and cycleways. So that upgrade is considered to be appropriate for this development, and obviously for future phases of the development as they come forward. So as I mentioned, there is a proposal to connect to Orchard Drive through a vehicular access point at a later stage, so not at the first 100 phase, but post that first phase. Nonetheless, there is proposed to be a pedestrian and cycle connection. You can just see in the green sort of edged line there, which would enable future occupiers to access via sort of pedestrian and cycle routes to Orchard Drive in the future. And the Orchard Drive vehicular access, subject to further detail, would be obviously required through subsequent phases. At this time, it's indicated that it would really need to be secured after that first 100 occupations. So just looking at a street hierarchy, which is important for these type of schemes, the full committed detail shows obviously that Spine Road in blue, secondary roads in sort of an orange colour there, private streets in green, and you can see there the sort of the purple colour is pedestrian and cycle routes, which sort of permeate throughout the site there, enabling good movement. Obviously the hierarchy on the second picture to the right shows how the subsequent phases are envisaged to connect up, and also connect to adjacent developments, either existing streets or the adjacent prosperity scheme as well. It's considered that the street hierarchy is good, is strong and legible, and would accommodate the site adequately. So this shows a sort of wider connectivity to the prosperity scheme, as I mentioned, and also obviously to development to the west. And that really shows a loop road, which I mentioned earlier as part of a vision for the broad concept plan. It shows a loop road for both bus, cycle and pedestrian routes to be able to enter in through Sandy Lane, circumvent the sites, go all the way around, and then back into the prosperity scheme and back out onto Sandy Lane to the north there to show that good loop. And that's really necessary in order to ensure that where bus provision might come forward in the future, they are able to enter and exit the site adequately. That loop road is important for that. Drainage is obviously detailed as well, both through the detailed scheme and then there's a future strategy to support the outline schemes. Basically, the site is not appropriate for infiltration following testing, so therefore it's important and necessary to attenuate on site, hence the attenuation basins, and then obviously discharge into IDB drains at Greenfield runoff rate. That detail has been agreed through discussions with the Lead Local Flood Authority, internal drainage boards, and also in terms of foul drainage, that's proposed to be pumped into existing sewers at Orchard Drive, and that's been agreed with Anglian Water. Appropriate conditions would ensure that a satisfactory scheme can serve the development, but certainly the detail that's come forward so far raises no technical concerns with any of the statutory providers. The scheme will have some arboricultural impacts. As I mentioned earlier, there's quite a bit of tree, scrubland, and a tree plantation at the north of the site. The scheme has been assessed by both the applicant's arboricultural officer and our own in-house, who raised no concerns, subject to sort of management strategies, method statements, and obviously a robust landscaping and replanting. Just worthy of note, there are 2 TPO trees that exist on the site, which I've noted there through the arrows. They are proposed to be removed. One sits right where the access needs to be at the northeast corner. Another one sits right in sort of right in the centre of the secondary roads and housing development there. These are basically, as identified in the officer report, they're oak trees, one of 6 metre, one of 8 metre. The rest of the TPOs, which you can see there edged green, the sort of green blobs across the site, they're all proposed to be retained as are hedgerows. And it's considered on balance that the TPOs proposed to be removed here are acceptable in order to sort of unlock that site and as I say, subject to a robust planting scheme, it's considered that that's acceptable in this instance. Again, there are going to be some ecological impacts to the development. Obviously, the site at the moment is generally scrubland and parts of it inaccessible. Nonetheless, the applicant has undertaken quite robust ecology surveys to sort of establish what the value of the site is and what habitats may or may not exist on site. This has been considered by the council's ecology officer. It's been identified through the biodiversity gain reports, the metrics that have been undertaken, that the development would actually result in, would result in a net loss to biodiversity. Obviously, at the time this application came in, biodiversity net gain was not statutory. However, it is statutory to demonstrate that no net loss across the site would avail, unless it's obviously mitigated with opportunities for off-site compensation. So through the process, the applicant has identified an area of land that's accessible by them to offset that biodiversity loss, which you can probably just see at the top left of the inset drawing there, which is about 750 metres east of the site. And the proposal is there to introduce and enhance that area to improve the biodiversity value of that in lieu of what can be achieved on site within the allocation. Notwithstanding that, conditions are also recommended to secure further enhancements to the development in terms of biodiversity. Some additional surveys need to be undertaken given the age of them currently, and long-term management of habitats through a LEMP is also proposed and deemed necessary in this instance. So there's a landscape master plan which obviously shows how it's the wider site is envisaged to come forward. There's a key focus to retain existing hedgerows, enhancing those, particularly around the boundaries, which would help soften its impact from a landscape point of view. Again, landscape impacts for, particularly with allocated sites of this scale, are unavoidable. But obviously there is a need for this site to come forward in order to deliver housing, and that need is balanced against that landscape harm. But nonetheless, the strategic landscape master plan that's been proposed is deemed acceptable and exploits and enhances the existing features within that site as best as practically possible. Just generally a quick one for the street scene. So the application is proposes a mixture of housing. Section 10.51 of the report identifies and discusses the mix of housing, which broadly accords with our latest housing needs in terms of different types of mix of housing. It's considered that the general designs are appropriate for the area, having regard to the existing characters, and would actually create quite an interesting feature in some areas. There's wayfinding buildings, materials used are interesting, and the designs really accord and reflect what the traditional buildings around that area as well. And again, it's considered that on balance, the general mix of housing there is acceptable. Just quickly through site photos. So this is basically Sandy Lane. The top left photograph is Sandy Lane, taken from the junction of Broad End Road and Burrowgate Road. So looking along Sandy Lane, you can see in the background there the plantation of trees. So they're conifer plantations. So the horticultural business from old. And you can see then the pictures on the bottom there are the western end of Sandy Lane, where it bends round up to Stowe Road. So the access point roughly is that where we look at that bottom right photograph, going along 50 200 metres, I think, is where the access point would come in, and then obviously that would curve into the site there, as I mentioned earlier. This top left photograph is Stowe Lane, the byway, so that runs down the western boundary of the site, is separated by quite dense hedgerow from the application site itself, but that is a right of way, and that essentially leads southwards and spits out at Orchard Drive, which is the top right photograph there. So you've got Orchard Drive and Stowe Lane where they converge, and you'll probably just make out in that picture, in the centre of that picture at the top right, is the public right of way, the Woolsoken Walk I mentioned, which is quite heavily hedged on either side. That's proposed to be retained and enhanced in order so that people can access the countryside and rights of way and still maintain that aesthetic there. The bottom photograph is a panoramic view taken from the south of the site, right south,
leading straight up, and you can see there's a green belt, which is that Woolsoken Walk, which I mentioned. So again, this shows that arable sort of open nature of that area. And then finally, this is the actual, generally the planning application site, the full application site that we're looking at. So as I mentioned, generally sort of scrubland. So this is the sort of northwestern corner of the area. There's indications of fly tipping, which I saw when I was out on my visit a few weeks ago. And also, you probably just can't make it out, but there's darker patches you can see, particularly in that top right photograph. There were sort of fires that have recently been started by the looks of it. There were quite a number of those around that area. So it's evident there's perhaps some areas of ASB occurring there, although I've not got any particular reports. And you can just see again that top right photograph of the sort of the tree plantation that I've mentioned. So just to sort of summarise, the site comprises part of a strategic allocation for East Wisbech. There's a broad concept plan that's been approved by this council, and it's considered that the application itself broadly follows that broad concept plan in terms of its land uses, connections, and general sort of arrangements. It's undergone several revisions. This application, as you can see, is a good 3 years old now, and therefore it's been quite a detailed application with a number of amendments, with a focus on sort of transport, drainage, and biodiversity sort of impacts and mitigation. It's considered that the fully committed scheme is acceptable, subject to conditions, and that the outline scheme that's submitted indicates that the remaining quantum of 200 units could be adequately accommodated within the site, with affording decent connectivity, as well as sort of amenity protections. There's been quite a comprehensive package of mitigation agreed, mixture of financial contributions, affordable housing, and some direct delivery of transport infrastructure and ecology mitigation. These would need to be secured through Section 106. Again, it is recognised that there will be some unavoidable landscape harm, given the location and sort of nature of the development. So obviously that there is a negative element there, which I think we have to acknowledge, and also in addition, due to sort of known viability constraints within this district, the full amount of infrastructure contributions can't be secured. However, greater than perhaps one would have predicted based on our old viability report. And obviously only a 5% affordable housing contribution is achievable. It's considered, however, on balance, the development would be sustainable and would accord with the development plan as taken as a whole. And it's considered, therefore, that recommendation is to approve the application as per Section 12 of the report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin. A very comprehensive report, I have to say. We have one speaker on this application. I'd now firstly like to invite Andrew Hodson. He's the agent to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes when you're ready, Mr. Hodson. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that presentation, Gavin. That's pretty comprehensive. As usual, when I come to this committee, it's really just for the clarification of answering any questions you've got. I've got Lee Russell from Seagate here as well for any questions later up. But what I would say, in 20 years of bringing planning applications for residential in this district, this has probably been one of the most complicated schemes I've had to deal with. We've had 4 planning officers on it, and Gavin's come in at the last minute and got us through to this position where we are. The reason for that is the site it's obviously an allocated site in your local plan, but it marries up to the site adjacent, and we had to make sure that before it came to this committee that we could be fairly confident, and we are now absolutely confident that it will work alongside the prosperity scheme that's going to be coming along, hopefully a committee very soon. So that means that what we've done is we've made sure that we've worked with our highways team to make sure that all of the footpaths and all of the highways and all of the off-site contributions are all dealt with. There's no doubt that if one scheme comes ahead of the other, that it can't be delivered. So all of that's been looked into in great detail, and that's why it's probably taken a bit longer to get it to committee than we would have liked. The scheme is a good one. Gavin didn't mention in his report there, sorry I've missed it, but the broad concept plan which you saw earlier, didn't give us much to work on. It's basically 4 rings and some scribbles on a page, and without saying it wasn't any. It was done back in the day, and that's been accepted. But so we were starting for a bit from scratch on that. So how we've approached it, because we've got different landowners developing this site out. Seagate, where the rings are in the middle, if you can see that, there was requirements for putting in both the school and for employment uses. So as we're not developing all of it, Seagate took the emphasis as the first phase, and we're delivering the safeguarded school land, which is the green area which you saw on the plan. I don't know whether that was referred to earlier. So just to clarify, that is safeguarded 2.3 hectares, I think, is the right size for that. That's 2 forms of entry primary school site. And so we presented that to Prosperity next door, and so Prosperity scheme, when that comes forward, you'll see we'll have the commercial schemes and things that are elevated on the Broad Concept Plan adjacent to that. So we've worked good planning and good communication with them to make sure that all marries up correctly. Okay, so that's the key things there. The scheme itself, 300 units, first phase 100 units. That's in detail. The biodiversity on the site was a complicated issue. The first phase is where that biodiversity is. We've managed to find a site just up the road, so no accusations of taking the biodiversity elsewhere. It's literally just 700 metres up the road along Broad End Lane there to move and to enhance that area as an offset. So we're now at equilibrium in that respect. But other than that, you'll see probably from the lack of people here today, we only had 5 public objections to this scheme in total, which is pretty amazing because how long it's been in for some of the applications that we get in. But it was fairly well received when we did the consultation back in 2022. And we've got no statutory objections to the scheme as we sit here today. And that's down to the hard work of my team and to Gavin and the team to get it to that position. So we're confident we've got a very good scheme here, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, members. Questions, clarifications? Councillor Wrench has got a hand up first, or the pen. Can you take your microphone off?
Thank you, Mr. Hodgson. I'll ask you the question I ask you every time. I don't see any reference to the internal drainage boards. I'm guessing that you have spoken to them in depth.
Yes, we have, and not only that, we've engaged with them directly. They came back to us with a requirement for an improvement to one of their drains to make it more efficient for their drains, and we're actually delivering that for them, so they're fully signed up, and not only that, they're getting some improvement works to their drainage system.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Senate Clough.
Thank you through you, Chair. I find it slightly disappointing, not a criticism of you, of course, but based on current understanding, the affordable unit provision is unlikely to be viable for a housing provider to take on the stock. So my question is, in the first 100 units, and you say units or dwellings, so I'm assuming that these are houses, not flats. How many, and that I'll ask you for clarification as well, but how many are in that first 100, 1 and 2 bedroom? What percentage are 1 and 2 bedroom in that first 100?
That's a very good question. I can't tell you that off my top of my head. Obviously, we're at 5% of affordable housing. That's to go across the whole of the scheme, and 5% of those first 100 will be. So I don't know if Gavin might be able to answer that in his questions because he's got the mix in front of him probably on that, so he'd be able to answer that for you, if that's okay. No flats.
Okay, anybody else at all? Councillor Marks and Councillor Miffordin.
Sorry, there is mention of 2 trees with TPOs being taken down. Is there no way it can be designed? I mean, they are oak trees.
Unfortunately, obviously, with any scheme that we do, we try to preserve any TPO trees, but they just put them in the planted them exactly the wrong places. One exactly where the access needs to go, and the other one's right in the middle of where the first phase layout needs to go. But having said that, we are retaining all the other TPO trees on it, and there's going to be a comprehensive replanting scheme which includes oak trees, so you're going to get more than compensated for the loss of those 2 trees.
Councillor Miffordin.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, just asking about the footpath there. There's I know this area quite well because I walk it and recently canvassing it as well. Just about the footpath, it says it's going to be retained, but now there's a road split right into 2. So how is that going to be maintained over the footpath?
Are you talking about the one that goes east to west across, the one with the trees that either side of it? That's the one, yeah, that's a really well, yeah. There has to be a crossing place, so we'll look for where that crosses through. I think it's going to have to be a controlled crossing there, because it does subdivide the whole site east to west. So there will be a location, there'll have to be a safe crossing point there in that location, because we can't circumvent it to get to phase 2 without crossing over that footpath, really.
And in what format is that crossing going to be?
Yeah, that'd be fine if you'd like to do that. No, no worries.
I wouldn't get him involved, but.
Yeah, so on the road crossing, so when we come through phase 1, that Spine Road, there'll be I think it's a road and a footpath each side at that point, or cycleway one side, so that will cross that existing footpath route. And I think that Gavin's conditioned that there needs to be a construction management plan put in place for that particular position as and when that crossing is put across the existing footpath route, just for public safety.
Thank you, but what format is it going to take? Is it going to be like a gate? Is it going to be gated? Is it going to be like the swing gates? How are you going to ensure public safety? Because it's going to be a main road. And also, are you going to retain the foliage that covers the path at the moment?
Yeah, it's going to have to be a control. I don't know whether it's going to be a gated or that we'll deal with that through conditions when we get to that point, I think. But it would have to be you were quite right, when you come up to the end of the footpath, there needs to be a safe crossing point, so it's going to be some form of formalised crossing point at that point, yeah. And we'll do everything we can to retain any foliage there, but ultimately, they're not TPO trees, so if we do need to take a couple of them down to create that corridor, then we're going to have to do that. Yeah. You mean tree coverage? Yes, as much as we can, yes.
Yeah, I think I'd like to come in there really now. Management company, you've got your first 100 or if it's likely to go through, it's successful. You've got your 100 houses. How are you going to incorporate the management plan with obviously the SUDS, the attenuation basin? Just give me a flavour of how that's going to work.
Yeah, so management company. So the SUDS basin will be proposed to go to Anglian Water adoption. As with all the drainage on site, management company will be looking after all of the green areas, and I'll just go back to Councillor's question about the footpath and the landscaping over the existing sort of public route there. That will all pretty much be fully retained, and that will fall into management company as well, because I believe the council probably maintain it a little bit along there. I've seen people going along, whoever does that, but that will fall into management company as well.
So going on from there, have you had any talks with Anglian Water? Everybody keeps mentioning Anglian Water are going to adopt the SUDS. How far is the discussions gone with this?
Yeah, so the drainage scheme, our civil engineer has discussed with Anglian Water the proposals along with the IDB. Until that, as you know, the Section 104 technical pack goes in for approval, there will be odds and sods from our drainage strategy, which obviously they comment on, but it will be put forward for adoption. And if there's anything that they don't particularly like or want changing, obviously we'll be proactive in doing that, because we don't particularly want it to fall to a management company. So we'd rather it go to adoption. So that's generally what we work to.
Yeah, now my favourite subject is roads, the spine roads mainly. I see that the condition is for binder course for the spine road. Yeah? Okay, with us. I'm not keen on, I'm not keen on binder courses. There's many developments in Fenland that have been left to binder course and nothing else has been done. We talk about it every planning committee. So I'm not keen on that. I would like to see in negotiations with officers that this road is brought up to adoptable standard. Obviously, if this is successful, build your 100 houses, absolutely, and that's absolutely fine by me. I can't see anything wrong with this application primarily, but hypothetically, from 10% would be left unoccupied until such this road is up for, hypothetically speaking, negotiation with officers and probably myself as well as chair, until this road is brought up to adoption. Seen too much of this where they've left and there's drains, ironwork, where it catches your car and it never gets finished. So I'm looking for something like that as a bit of comfort for my mind. So give me some comfort.
Yeah, so on the Spine Road aspect, it will much come down to Cambridgeshire County Council and their acceptance that construction traffic will be going to phase 2 over a finished road. Generally, they won't allow that. Now, what on the phase 1, obviously the phase 1 is a sort of circular link road. So on completion, or just prior to completion of the dwellings on phase 1, that road can all be surfaced and put onto maintenance because construction traffic will not be going into phase 1 anymore. But I think from a Cambridgeshire County Council will probably have their hands tied in that they won't take that while construction traffic's going off it on the Spine Road. Now, there'd probably want to be a conversation at some point, depending on if or when that school come forward, because obviously it would need to be at that point. But as far as it stands at the moment, getting to phase 2, whilst we would probably be happy in doing it, I don't think Cambridgeshire County Council would accept it.
May disagree on that one. Nigel Edgar, I'm in monthly contact with him about these S38 agreements, and he's got more S38 agreements outstanding that he could pay for his front wall in. So, and he would be happy, in my opinion, of what he's told me, to enter into negotiations with you on that. But having said that, that's what I'm looking for, some comfort, because I've seen so many roads, as Councillor Marks has been, Councillor Miffordin and Councillor French, and everybody on this committee has seen unfinished roads, and this is absolutely unacceptable. Thank you.
I think on this point, I think on this point, sometimes you've got a separate construction access road, but we haven't this time. We have to use that Spine Road to get to the south of the site, and if we lay that to tight, it's just going to get ripped. It'll just be abortive works, and it'll get ripped up by the construction traffic anyway. So it would be abortive. It would be an abortive cost for us. But like Lee says, we can do the phase 1 roads up to that level.
That's what I'm looking for. The phase 1 road, not the phase 2, because we don't know when that's going to come forward, do we?
I was referring to the Spine Road. Really, we can't do the Spine Road up to adoptable standard, and while we're still constructing phase 2, because it'll just get ripped, just get ruined, and it'll be abortive.
Not much comfort then. Okay, Councillor Miffordin.
Thank you, Chair. Just back to the roads issue. What are you doing with Stowe Lane? Is that part of, are you going to do anything with Stowe Lane at all? Because right now it's not complete. The part that leads to, I know it's not all in your development, but it does affect it, because part that leads to Meadowgate Lane is just more or less a footpath. And then the other side around then to Stowe Gardens, and then to the adjacent to the construction site, I don't think the roads there are adopted at all, because it's quite rough surface. It's not even tarmac. So are you doing anything with that part of the road, Stowe Lane?
So Stowe Lane, up off the corner of Sandy Lane. So obviously there's that quite a 90-degree bend as you come up from Stowe Lane onto Sandy Lane, and we're taking that bend, obviously making the radius much acceptable in highways term, and then we're going up Stowe Lane. I think there's a junction, not too many metres up there, but our improvement works and footpath addition will go up to that the junction just upon that Stowe Lane road. Yeah, so there's an amount of improvement work and footpath addition.
Thank you.
Well, I'll come back on that. Just one more thing that the garage is noted in the report. The garage length is only 5.4 metres. Generally, the Fenland District Council want 7 metre length garages. So why is the 1.7 metre, 1.6 metres? Why is the difference? Because it seems to me people do put bicycles, fridges, freezers in the garage, which is absolutely fine. I do myself. But you are making the garages smaller, but you are encouraging people to put their cycles outside, undercover maybe. But why? So the question, getting down to brass tacks, is why the difference, 5.4 to 7?
Well, the 7 is not industry standard, I can tell you. I know you have big cars in Fenland, but that is and every time we look at a layout in Fenland, we see that it's not so the industry standard is more to what we built, that you can fit a car into that garage. So in this case, they'll be built to industry standard, but also all of the properties will have storage sheds or facilities to store cycles in. So they'll be able to have a car in the garage, and they'll have facilities provided for cycle storage. So we're not combining them together. We're not ignoring it either. Cycle storage will be going on the property.
Okay. Councillor Gerstner.
Going on the previous speech we had here before, I nearly always ask applicants on this size of application, will all the houses have some form of environmentally friendly way of producing electricity, such as solar panels? Every house will have one built?
Yeah, all houses, our general construction specification, we have quite a number of solar panels on roofs. So anywhere from 2 to 10, depending on what we require to meet SAP calcs, etc. Some people do design it out, but we tend to put solar panels on every house that we construct.
Thank you very much.
Members, any more questions at all? No, thank you very much, gentlemen. Now I'd like to invite members to put questions to officers, if you've got any. Sorry? Yeah, I wasn't. I've just been told the transport team are here from Camps County Council. If there's any questions from members at all, so we can add them into the... Anything? No? Still nothing? No, okay. So thank you, everybody. Now I'd like to invite members to debate the item in respect to material considerations relevant to the application. If you'd like to speak, we're in debate, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor Fred.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, looking at the date the application was first submitted and where we are now, I think a considerable amount of work has actually been carried out. I think it's a good design, and I will support it.
Still in debate. Anybody to add to Councillor French's comments or different? Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you again. I may have missed something, but the only 5% of affordable housing, I think, is of concern. I know there's been a viability study carried out on this. Explain, sorry, the officer explain to me how this figure's come about and why it's such a low number.
Please, just very quickly.
Yeah, so through you, Chair. So obviously, viability, is a known constraint throughout this district. I don't think it's anything new that we're experiencing. Certainly with this scheme in particular, the broad concept plan itself identifies that it's likely that initial phases of the allocation as a whole are likely to be constrained through viability, and there are a number of reasons for that. Obviously, the developer needs to pay the landowner a sufficient amount of money in order for them to be encouraged to release the land in the first place. But secondly, there's a lot of upfront infrastructure costs required to unlock what is ultimately an undeveloped area of land here, utilities, etc. I think furthermore, as we've seen, there's a lot of infrastructure direct delivery requirements in terms of highways realignments of roads, etc. And notwithstanding that, the actual developer itself, through the viability process, has actually come up with a package which I would say, given where we were back in 2022, where this application was submitted, the package there probably exceeded what we would have expected through our own in-house viability that was undertaken, the HDH viability, which for sites such as Wisbech would have indicated we're probably likely to get £2,000 per dwelling and no affordables. That's basically the bottom line is what it said. Whereas here we're able to secure £2,000 per dwelling, 5% affordables, plus obviously there's other contributions going towards sort of bus mitigation and things like that. So whilst, you know, I think it's always disappointing when we have to sort of stare down the barrel of a viability issue with these applications. I think with this scheme, given where it is, given the constraints, given the expectations perhaps that on this occasion it's sort of deemed expected that we would sort of be falling short of the full amount of contributions, but officers are comfortable it's justified in this instance.
No, thank you for explaining that. At least it's out in the public domain now as to the reasons why. But the second question I've got is, from the 106 money, the bus contribution, stated, where does that actual money go?
Okay, thanks. So, I mean, this may be a more pertinent question for our transport colleagues here because they're the ones that requested it. So if you're happy to answer that, I'd be grateful.
Section 106 for bus money would come to the county council, and then it would go out to a bus company depending on who serves the area at the time. Thank you.
So that Section 106 money is quite a substantial amount of money that I read. Is that a phased-in money over a period of time, and is it released to the local bus company in a phased way?
Yeah. So essentially, we don't actually have the detail of when that payment would be due at this stage, because obviously you need to gather the amount of occupations across that site in order to yield the demand for the bus, so to make that bus a viable option. So you wouldn't, for example, be seeing it after the first 100 occupations, because the general average of users of buses would be low to the point you'd end up with a bus driving around with maybe two customers sitting in it. So we would have to look at that through the 106 negotiation in terms of when the phasing is going to occur, when the payment would need to occur. And obviously I think we need to be mindful that there is an adjacent scheme that's coming forward, sort of almost simultaneously. They're committing 300 dwellings in detail, so therefore, should that get approved, we would probably expect this sort of twin track of development coming out the ground at the same time, and we would need to factor that in terms of when it's likely that a demand bus service would come on stream in order to support those customers. What's important is that we do secure alternative travel modes, because obviously this will have, in terms of car users, this will have an impact on the highway network, and it's deemed therefore important that we try and offer and incorporate alternative transport means. So that's why there's been a heavy focus on pedestrian cycle routes, the bus service as well, because we're trying to reduce obviously car users across this site because of the impacts to the wider highway network. But in terms of when that specific bus contribution would need to be paid to the bus provider would really be a matter of sort of discussion at that point, because the bus provider would need to be comfortable that it's a viable option for them to run at that time, depending on occupations.
Thank you. Again, through the transport member here, buses are very sensitive at the moment within Fenland. Explain to me, if they're being given a contribution of quite a lot, it goes to the bus company that's probably based in Cambridge, okay, or Peterborough, okay, as it may, that it just doesn't go into a big pot and is diluted in general terms over buses. How have we got any guarantee that that amount of money is going to come back to the local area?
I mean, good question, and the answer to that is yes. Obviously, we put strict conditions on the bus company that they are to deliver an improved, I think it's an improved service here. So we wouldn't just hand them the money and say, spend it as you want. It has to be spent on an improved service to serve this area of Wisbech, where the application is.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I hope that gives you some comfort, Councillor Gerstner. I'm going to bring Councillor Senate Clough. Thank you.
I'm going to allow Councillor French to go before me, and then I'll come in.
Yeah, just to give you clarification with regard to the contribution for the buses, bearing in mind this is an outline application, the time it is built is going to be at least 2 or 3 years before that money is due. And can I point out that in 2 or 3 years' time we will not be here, it will be a unitary authority and they will make up their mind. But also the combined authority will be the one that is working on transport, not county council, because county council would exist.
Absolutely correct. Councillor Senetclough.
Thank you, Chair. To return to members' debate, which is what I believe we were in.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
so I just wanted to draw attention to 10.55 and where it discusses the housing mix and how we can influence that in terms of future reserve matters and the conditions securing that detail. So I just didn't want that to sort of slip by us because there's been a lot of discussion about the size of houses and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to draw members' attention to that.
Right. Still, as we're still in discussion, we need some clarification from officers, which was very good and very helpful from the County Council and obviously our officers. So the debate, I'm going to close the debate now. Have you got anything else to add to it? Nothing? Absolutely nothing, he says. So, do I have a proposal to go with officer recommendation to grant planning permission? Councillor French, what are you proposing?
Go with the officer's recommendations.
Yeah, okay. I will take you in a minute, Councillor Gerson, and say that with my condition put in. Please put some meat on the bone of mine.
I'm assuming you're making reference to the question.
The road.
Yeah. All I was going to say is the reality is that we've accepted, we've had a number of conditions imposed recently. Obviously, it's a little bit more complex in relation to a phase scheme that's a hybrid scheme, but the principle of such condition isn't, I wouldn't say not problematic, it's not objection in planning terms. So I think if you delegated it to officers, bring forward maybe with consultation with yourself and the Vice Chair or someone, then we could do that. But yeah, and obviously, I don't think it'd necessarily be a principal problem, but yeah.
We're referring to the adoption, the section 38 and adoption of the road, the main spine road. So given that sits outside the planning process, whilst you could condition it, it's not an enforceable condition because it's not part of the planning process. So just bear that in mind.
I think for clarity, it's not that it will be adopted, it's adoptable standard. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's a difference, yeah, so yeah, it's about the quality.
That's a different altogether, isn't it? Whether you adopt it, but one would hope eventually that you would. So I've got a proposal to move on. I've got a proposal from Councillor French to go with officer recommendation, seconded by Councillor Gerstner. With that condition put on, can I have a show of hands on that to move forward?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Okay, that's been approved then. Thank you. So, the final item on the agenda is agenda item number 7, surprisingly, which is a confidential item. Members are requested to consider the exclusion of the press and public during discussion of this item on the basis that it contains information which would be exempt from disclosure under paragraph 7 of the Schedule 12A, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1972. The public interest has been applied and it's considered that the need to retain information as exempt outweighs the public interest in the disclosure. So, can I ask members who do not agree with the assessment and therefore the proposal to exclude the press for the discussion of this item, raise their hands, and I can't see any, thank you. So thank you members, you are in agreement. Therefore, member services, please stop the link to YouTube. Could I please also ask members of the public and press to leave the meeting, which they're doing. Joe will give us the down when the link has been broken.